Welcome to Winning on Issues, where Texas politics meets strategy and implementation. I'm your host, James Dickey, former chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas, and that includes our huge public education system. 5.5 million students, over 1,000 independent districts, and a budget that rivals the GDP of many nations. But scale alone does not guarantee success. Achieving the outcomes our students deserve is a massive operational endeavor. It takes more than just high goals to move the needle. To modernize the curriculum, ensure accountability, and improve reading scores requires data-driven management. It demands an ecosystem where every participant executes well. Our guest today is the architect of that execution. Mike Morath is a software developer and entrepreneur by trade who brought a private sector mindset to one of the toughest public sector jobs in the state. Since 2016, he has rewired the Texas Education Agency with a focus on rigor and transparency. He operates with a single metric in mind, student outcomes. He joins us to discuss the operational reality of the new A through F ratings, the rollout of Bluebonnet Learning, and how we build an education system that truly wins for Texas families. Thank you for joining us, Commissioner Morath.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you absolutely have taken on a huge job, and you did that after a successful career in software and finance. What was the driving force that made you want to get into the gears of the TEA?
Yeah, it's certainly not something I could say if you had a very successful private sector life. Why would you throw all that away and go to an environment where everyone constantly questions absolutely everything that happens? I don't think any of us really know why the Lord has us on the path that He does, but I can remember pretty clearly. I was a Big Brothers, part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, a mentor for about a decade in Dallas. So I had two different little brothers over the course of that time period. And the first young man that I was matched with, when he turned 16, he wanted to apply for a job at Brahms. And so he comes to the house and he starts to fill out an online job application. And what I realized very quickly is that his level of literacy is not adequate to fill out this entry-level job application. So, of course, I help him through that exercise, but it really struck me, and I just got to a point where I could not sit idly by and let that happen to any more of my brothers and sisters ever again. So I sold my software company and I ran for the school board because I wanted to make our schools work better for our kids.
That is such an important mission, and it takes somebody willing to really dig in and do that. But coming from a business background, you do bring a good perspective about trying to get, especially, a return on our investment. And it's a significant investment. How do you define the return on investment when it comes to public schools for our taxpayers?
Yeah, it's a great question. Most directly, it's not as if we're producing income. What we're trying to do is produce educated young people. There are actually a lot of proxies for the kinds of education measures that you can find in young people and their lifetime income. For example, at third grade, one of the things that has the highest correlation with long-term lifetime income is actually your scores on a standardized math test in third grade. In some ways, it's even more predictive than the overall levels of health of the child at that age. So it's the evidence base that we have on these things is pretty significant. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that kids can read, and they can read proficiently. They can engage with Shakespeare and understand what he is saying. That they can do math. They certainly have their times tables memorized, but on a much more significant level, they can think mathematically and logically in the ways that that the world will dictate. And so our ROI is measured at, we know how much we spend on the system. In Texas, it's about $85 billion a year. We have 5.5 million souls in that system. And so we look at what is their level of academic proficiency as they emerge from that system. And then how does that translate into their sort of long-term life prospects? And our charge is pretty simple. We want the best learning outcomes at the lowest cost possible, period, full stop. So every time that we think about operational practices or specific investments, you have to bring that ROI lens. The taxpayers do not provide limitless funds. And so you want to make investments that generate the most learning gains for kids. There's a lot of interesting research on this subject, and one of the better sort of research syntheses that was done, it's reproduced a couple of different ways, is that if you're looking at like no strings attached money, for every $1,000 of additional funds that you put into public education, you will get on average 4 days of additional learning as a result. And so by contrast, when COVID hit and schools underwent this massive disruption, we saw 4.5 months of declines in learning. So just to make up for that, if you're doing the 1,000 to 4 ROI, we would bankrupt the state almost immediately. Yeah. So you have to find higher value strategies in terms of how you're teaching kids and how you're supporting them structurally, top to bottom in the system. And so that's generally, what I think my job is. I try to find the things that will do the most good for the most kids at the lowest price with the sort of shortest implementation runway.
Well, and that's so important to pay attention to that data, because there's significant proof that there's not a one-to-one correlation. The more spending does not equal better outcomes.
That's right. I mean, and we this is used as a talking point with frequency, but it's really very true. And you can explain the truth in this with a basic example. Just think about entry-level kindergarten. You have a kindergarten classroom today. It's got, let's say, 20 kids in it, teacher. But let's say that the teacher is not using lessons in terms of the lesson plan that teach the kids the letter-sound relationship, that teach them the beginning of phonics and how to decode the English language. Instead, they're just having to memorize a whole bunch of words. Let's say that that's the nature of the approach to lesson design. And then we double the amount of money we want to spend on that classroom. And so now the next year you have 2 teachers, 10 kids each, or you have the same teacher making twice the pay, either way. But they're still using the same approach to lessons. They're still approaching it the same way. Would we expect, with that doubling of the investment, would we expect the kids to learn how to read any better? No, you wouldn't. There will be no gain from that. So the relationship between money and outcomes is not particularly strong, because it's actually what you do with the money that really, really matters.
Absolutely. And you're known for being data driven, but you're in a tough situation, right? We can be analytical and we can be clinical, but at the end of the day, it's kids who are succeeding or not. How do you square that circle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I do focus on data, because at this kind of scale, if you're not organizing and analyzing how outcomes work with relative inputs, you're likely to waste huge amounts of taxpayer money. But school is about children, and humans are the most complicated creation in the world. And we're a wonder of creation. And kids require love and support and discipline. And there is no love without discipline. They require challenge, and they have to overcome adversity. I know this not just as Commissioner of Education, but also as a dad. I have 4 young children. And I want my kids to learn how to read and write and do math. I want them to learn our history. I want them to be scientifically literate. I also want them to live a life of kindness and follow the golden rule and be young men and women of character, people who can overcome adversity. This is all what we want to be true. And many aspects of humanity you can't really quantify. It's we're created in God's image. We're these these beings full of hope and optimism and pain and like all the things that come with being human. But we're spending money, we're employing people. These are business processes that are designed to actually deliver some sort of educational preparation for these young people. So we have to hold ourselves to account. We have to ask ourselves, is it working? It's typically not just a yes and no question. It's how well is it working? Could it be better next week than it was last week? If so, how? And how do we know whether we're getting better? So you have to bring an analytical lens, but also recognize like this work starts with a heart that is filled with love. If you do not love children, this is not a good industry for you to work in. And so, you when you're looking at spreadsheets, this is not just spreadsheets. This is the lives of young people that we're talking about.
No kidding. Well, and that's probably one of the reasons that you've pushed for some of the modernization that you've pushed for at TEA in your years there. How have you been able to and struggled with changing the culture?
Well, sort of at the agency in particular, so the agency's sort of small relative to public education as a whole in Texas. It's about hiring well. It's about having strong systems of performance management. You have defined projects that have defined outcomes, defined quality metrics, and holding people accountable to performance. I think since I have been at TEA, we've probably experienced about 70% total turnover of the agency, because I want to have the absolute best and brightest minds working at the agency that are filled with hearts of love for children, but that will work tenaciously to achieve objectives for them. We have to recognize that we're a creation of the legislature. Our job is to, in some ways, regulate activity that happens in schools, but there are no kids educated in our buildings, so we have to approach this with a servant leader's mindset that you exist to help teachers be more effective in the classroom with kids in schools all over the state. So it's anybody who's a student of Edwards Deming and total quality management principles, we're just bringing those principles to the public sector.
Well, and 70% turnover over the course of nearly 10 years now, that's significant, especially in a state agency, but it's not, that's not mayhem.
Right, that's exactly right. You want to be thoughtful about your approach to change.
Yeah. Well, and in making an impact, in measuring and making sure we get the outcomes, well, 2025, we finally got the A through F ratings. Talk some about why that simple letter grade was so important and what kind of impacts you're seeing from it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a profoundly important piece of public education in Texas. We have to know how well our schools are working for our kids. Before I was a commissioner, I was a school board member in Dallas. And the most important thing for me to assess as the member of the governing body of that district was, are our schools better, worse, or the same this year than they were the last year? And then I evaluate the effectiveness of my management team based upon this, because your job is to make the outcomes better. That's why we pay you. And so we need to know any given year, are the schools getting better? Parents need to know how well the schools are working generally for their own children. If you're a parent of a 4-year-old, you're going to start thinking about kindergarten pretty significantly. Despite our best efforts, not all of our kindergarten classrooms are perfect. And so we want to give parents every tool that we possibly can to empower them to make the best school choice decision for their kids, and then once they're enrolled, to advocate for that school to get better and better and better. This is it's a critical component of driving improvement in learning quality for kids, and we know that this is true. When you get an A on your campus, you celebrate. This is a way for you to reward the adults for accomplishing hard work for their children. When you get an F on the campus, you do the opposite. You realize this is danger, Will Robinson. Something is not working for our kids. And There may or may not be high stakes for us as adults, but there are very high stakes for those kids because you only get one shot at first grade. And we have got to change practice rapidly so that their second grade is much better than their first grade was. Otherwise, we're not setting them up to pursue a life of the American dream. We're setting them up for lives of quiet desperation. So we've got to use this gift that the legislature has given us, this of the A through F system, so that everyone, school board members, voters, taxpayers, parents, educators, can seize on how well did it work in the last year, and then how are we going to make it better next year?
That absolutely is critical. And I can't tell you how many parents I know who made choices to go somewhere because the school was doing better, or to hunker down and make their own better.
That's right.
Both are really important. When a school does get a C or a D rating, it's a wake-up call. Are district leaders, are they appropriately responding to these kind of ratings now that
Yeah, now that they're out, they do. A through F certainly commands attention. In fact, there was a fascinating research study. If you label a school and you call it something other than F, like it's underperforming, and you compare that to the managerial actions that are taken after a school comes out with an F label, the F label is actually far more useful for the children. Because it causes far more adult action, and that's the name of the game. This is about us changing our practices to give the kids a better life. So yes, I think our school system leaders around the state do pay attention to it. Unfortunately, there's at least some number of them that want to shoot the messenger. They dispute the results. They disagree with the results. And I actually think that that's pretty toxic leadership behavior. You don't want to have a system where you focus so much on these outcomes to the detriment of the kind of leadership that you're trying to bring to your people. You sort of like accountability without support is much like the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Right.
So you want to create a culture of sort of let's use this information and get better. But you also just simply don't want to ignore this information. If you have a weight problem, you can choose to never get on a scale, and you will still have a weight problem. And so the information that we use to evaluate schools gives an accurate appraisal of the performance of students on those campuses, which is a consequence of the decisions that the adults are making to get them to that level of performance. And so again, it's coming upon us. We're paid. Some of us aren't paid as much as we would like, but we are still paid. The taxpayers ask us to execute this mission for these kids. And we have to do it so that we give each child the kind of outcomes that we would want as if they were our own children. This is our responsibility.
Absolutely. And back to, money not necessarily determining outcomes, but accountability and scales mattering. 43% of high poverty campuses still got an A or a B.
That's right.
Disproving that there's a direct correlation.
Yeah, I will say to the cows come home that poverty is not destiny, that the American dream is alive and well, and it can be reflected in our schools with the proper practices of adults. And let me state it a different way. If you are born on a bed of money, that does not teach you how to read. It is the set of curricular practices that you're exposed to, the vocabulary that you're exposed to, the language, being taught phonics, being exposed to rich literature. That's what teaches you how to read. This is in our locus of control as educators. We can't control what happens outside of the school building, but we can control the richness of our curriculum. We can ensure that our lessons are designed around cognitive science principles, and then we can hold ourselves accountable for delivering that content to our kids. And when done so, again, 43% of our campuses that are high poverty, so 80% of kids need federal subsistence assistance just to eat on a regular basis, and yet they are reading and doing math at very high levels. We have too many proof points in Texas that If we, as the adults in their lives, get our act together in how we run our schools, that we can move mountains for kids while they're in our care. But if we don't, if we lose focus, if we make decisions that are based on our own convenience rather than what our kids need, then our kids can suffer as a result.
Oh, and constantly pointing to external factors and making them excuses removes us of our agency and robs us of our agency.
Yeah, I mean there are for sure things that are outside of the locus of control of a teacher, of a principal, of a superintendent. But that does not excuse taking responsibility for all the things that are in our locus of control that we can take action on. And it is with certainty in our locus of control the ability to provide good mathematics instruction.
Absolutely. And while it's been fantastic to see 43% of the schools in low income areas having an A or a B rating, there have been a couple of school districts where the state has had to intervene, and it required massive stabilization. What's the key ingredients that allow a district to move from intervention back to independence?
Yeah, it's at its core, leadership matters. As a former elected school board member in Dallas, you got trustees, they choose to run for office, the voters vote them in. You can either focus on creating a leadership culture, on hiring a superintendent, on supporting and otherwise holding the superintendent accountable for delivering outcomes in learning quality for children, or you can focus on other things. And every minute that you choose to focus on something that isn't related to improving the child's ability to grow in reading and math, you are going to take away from their ability to grow in reading and math. And so at its core, what we do in these interventions and why they have been successful, and they have been, each of our interventions in Texas has actually been successful, which is unusual because that's not the case in other states. It is because we ensure that our leadership team goes in with a plan that is relentlessly focused on learning quality. They try to defund, deprioritize all other distractions inside that school system. And let's get back to the fundamentals of why we have school in the first place.
Well, and while it's fantastic news to hear that they've been improving, 24% of districts improved their letter grade this year. That's amazing momentum. How much longer can we hope to see that continue?
I mean, I am still an optimist. We have a lot of people that sign up to work in education because they love kids, and they've been getting a lot of talents, and they use those talents to help the kids in their care. But they have to work in a system that helps them stay focused on learning outcomes. This is why A through F is so important. It's why so many of the components of the public policy framework that the legislature has established are so child-focused, because we as the adults have to remain focused on them. And so, again, it's a continuous improvement machine. We evaluate every year, and you don't live in a utopia. Maybe you had an off year, but the question is, what are you going to do better next year? And we support those that are leading the charge locally so that they can get better each year. And in the very rare cases that do unfortunately happen where local leadership fails to turn the ship around, then we temporarily intervene, replace local leadership with others. They turn it around, and then we get back to normal.
Well, and part of that continuous improvement machine is making sure we've got a great curriculum. Let's talk about Bluebonnet Learning. What motivated the TEA to come up with that and make it open education resources?
Yeah, it's when you're trying to educate and mold eager young minds, and you're actually trying to do that 20 kids at a time, 400 kids at a time, 4,000 kids at a time, 5.5 million kids at a time, there's a great deal of complexity in that enterprise. But we can simplify it by saying, at the end of the day, it comes down to good content, good teaching, and more of it, period. And so in the years leading up to COVID, there was some national researchers that began analyzing a question. of how good is the content in our classrooms. And they looked at a bunch of different states. We used that methodology, replicated in 26 school systems in Texas. And what we found was that only 19% of assignments that were given to kids in classrooms across this sample of school systems in Texas was on grade level. And it's not because 81% were above grade level. The rest were below grade level. And this is the nature of the curriculum that the school used, the instructional materials, the textbooks, the overhead projectors, whatever, all the stuff that comes together to create assignments for kids. And you can imagine how problematic this is, because this was an accident. I'm convinced nobody was deliberately engaging in this massive enterprise to dumb down education, but it was on a grand scale. We were dumbing down what we were showing our kids. And so you've got a kid comes to school every day, and a kid works his or her tail off, making A's and B's, doing the assignments that he or she is given. You got a teacher working 60 plus hours a week, nights and weekends, pouring everything he or she has into the kids in the classroom, giving them the assignments, not realizing the assignments are below grade level. And some kids are working hard, earning A's and B's. And then at the end of the year, you give them an on-grade level assessment from the state, the STAR test, the wildly popular STAR test. And for large numbers of kids, the first time that they saw a grade level reading passage was on the STAR test delivered by the state. And so you made A's all year long, and then you failed the bejeebers out of the STAR test. And everybody's like, what gives? And so human nature being what it is, we all just get really angry at this test. But what we, again, found was that the curriculum that we had been either providing teachers or not providing teachers and forcing them on nights and weekends to cobble together themselves, which is even like more problematic because we're working our teachers to the bone. It just wasn't rigorous. It wasn't appropriate grade level content. So we built Bluebonnet to address this. It's a gold standard built based upon state standards. So our State Board of Education adopts something called the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So it's tightly aligned with their grade level standards. It has all of the best cognitive science principles from cognitive psychology and from educational psychology to make sure that the memory sticks. You got to like just saying it to the kid is not enough. Right. And it provides a lot of structure so the teacher does not have to spend every single night of his or her life on the internet trying to find supplemental lesson materials for their kids, which is overworking our teachers. And also, I don't know if you've been on the internet recently, but there's some odd stuff on the internet. So we're providing teachers with this kind of support so that they can provide grade level instruction to our kids. And the outcomes are pretty spectacular. School districts that adopt this and then actually use it, because it's one thing to say you're using it. If it's all on the shelf and you're not teaching with it, then you're not really using it. But you want to train and support your teachers on it and ensure it's being taught in the classroom. You're seeing double-digit gains in reading proficiency and math proficiency for kids. And in some cases, you see lower-income kids in special education, gaining more than everybody else. So a rising tide is raising all ships. And in fact, some of our most at-risk student populations are rising even faster. Again, because demography is not destiny. No. As long as we have given them rigorous curriculum in the first place, they will learn. So that's what Bluebonnet is. It exists both in reading and in mathematics. And so in mathematics, lots of exercises in elementary school to memorize your times tables, lots of repetitive drills, which for some reason people think is a bad idea, but I don't know how you get good in math without practice. I don't know how you get good in anything without practice. Yeah. And then in reading, you teach them handwriting and penmanship in cursive and in print, spelling, grammar, syntax, phonics, and how to decode the English language, but also exposure to great literature. So in third grade, kids will read The Wind in the Willows. In fourth grade, they're going to read Treasure Island. In fifth grade, they're reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. In fifth grade, they actually read an adapted version of Don Quixote. In fifth grade, they read Shakespeare in fifth grade because they can when properly instructed. And it's a broad liberal arts set of content. So you've got some of civics and ethics and science and our history and literature and nursery rhymes and fairy tales. It's a little bit of everything, because that's how you make good thinkers, is you give them a lot of the rich intellectual history of Western civilization.
I was blessed to have a great Western civilization curriculum growing up and even in college, and it really has been a tragedy if we lost it. I'm so glad that
it's coming back in
students
Texas.
are going to have it. Well, and part of that you talked about the writing and penmanship and cursive. Well, there's a lot of emphasis on printed materials and doing away with, or at least minimizing, reliance on technology. Talk about
that's right. So Bluebonnet, when it came about as a result of an act of the legislature, and it was we were required to build this textbook. I'm using air quotes because it's sort of a lot of things: worksheets, posters on the walls. It's a lot of stuff. We were required to build this set of instructional material with where the intellectual property is owned by the taxpayer. So you own Bluebonnet. You can go to our website. They're all a bunch of PDFs. You can download PDFs, print them out, and start using it today. People can use it in homeschool, private school, wherever. It's free for Texans. But you can imagine I could have like a Chromebook and I could download a PDF and I could put it on a digital device. You don't want kids learning how to read on digital devices. There's a bunch of evidence to say that's a bad thing. You want them to have printed text in front of them. You want them to be using pencil and paper periodically. Yeah. And so the legislature has a $20 per kid, basically print incentive associated with Bluebonnet. So if you as a school system want to use this, the state's like, we've got your back. We'll drop ship you a whole set of printed bundles. You just tell us when, and it's yours. And so it's essentially been made functionally free, even in printed form, for all of our public school systems in Texas.
That's fantastic. Well, and you alluded to this about the classics, and the classics including, the great works you talked about. I mean, Treasure Island, Animal Farm, but also incorporating stories from the Bible and the Iliad and Homer and other great works. What's so important about that common literary canon for Texas kids?
Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know when the last time you read de Tocqueville was. He's commenting on the American people as much as he is commenting on our system of government. And what makes America truly exceptional in the world. And he recognized in the 1830s, 1840s, that the Americans did in fact have a common body of knowledge. We read the same stuff when we were growing up, and this was true for 200 years of our history. It has become less true over the last 30 or 40 years, where we, yes, do kids read Shakespeare in public schools? They do, but we did a survey and maybe 40% of kids are reading, say, Romeo and Juliet. Only 40%. So is it common? Yes, but it's still not ubiquitous. And if you're trying to build a general diffusion of knowledge, which is what the Texas Constitution calls for, and you want in a pluralistic republic citizens to be able to engage with each other, we have to have a common fact base. We have to know the same things. We have to read the same things. And in our country's history, you have this entire intellectual tradition of Western civilization that informed and has breathed into our citizenry what has made America great. In an educational context, in terms of just literacy, being able to read a newspaper story, listening to a sports broadcast, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody just make an offhand reference to the prodigal son returned. And the question is, what does that mean? Right. Where did it come from? We have 240 idioms in the English language from the King James Bible. The stories that have informed the lexicon of American adults, these stories are rich from the classics. So you think about Steinbeck and Of Mice and Men. You think about the Scarlet Letter. You think about the Odyssey, going back to ancient Greece. You think about the major stories of the Bible. These are what is required to be a literate adult in our country. And ensuring that we provide this kind of content and background on these stories for children. As they're growing up, they understand our intellectual tradition and they get the references when they read something. And if you don't get the references when you read something, you don't understand what you're reading. So this is, it's a prerequisite to an educated citizenry. So we lean very heavily on the classics in Bluebonnet because that's what is necessary to make children literate.
Absolutely. I spoke with a former elected official who said he was talking about the legislature passing a Good Samaritan bill, and that he was speaking with someone who was not aware what that meant.
What is the Good Samaritan? Where does that story come from?
Yeah.
So there's a Bluebonnet lesson actually in kindergarten. It's part of a unit called Serving Our Neighbors. And it talks about police and fire and EMT, and they are here to serve us. It talks about our military service members and the sacrifices that they make to serve us. Teachers, they are there to serve you. Business owners, they are offering a service. They're not money-grubbing capitalists trying to destroy your lives. No. This is what life is about. This is about people working in their own interest, but also serving you. But you think about, where does that intellectual tradition come from? That intellectual tradition does not actually come from ancient Sparta, where babies were sometimes sacrificed. It comes from a very specific intellectual tradition that has been pretty important in all of Western civilization. So the story of Good Samaritan comes from the story, the books of the New Testament, and so there's an adapted version of the story of the Good Samaritan that's provided in that kindergarten unit on Serving Our Neighbors. So kids, like, what is a Good Samaritan? What does the word mean? Where does the story come from? What is it? What is this about? Now, that story, of course, is featured in a major world religion, but it's provided for its historic context. It's provided for the vocabulary and background knowledge, so that kids can be exposed to these ideas. We want, mom and dad is in charge of values, virtues, and religious belief, but we want to make sure the kids are educated while they're going to school.
Absolutely. Well, and as part of all that, making sure the educators are prepared to teach these lessons and make these cross-curricular connections, how do we ensure that they're prepared, and how do we ensure that the parents' right to opt out are both respected?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we have to train the teachers. They need to be familiar with these. It's hard to teach the story of the Good Samaritan if you don't know the story of the Good Samaritan. It's hard to teach the Odyssey if you've never read the Odyssey. So we want to make sure that teachers are familiar with this content. They understand, effective strategies for instructional delivery. They've seen quality lessons that are designed around it. But also they're prepared for the kinds of classrooms discussions that can happen and prepared to talk to parents about it. So Bluebonnet Learning actually comes with parent take-home letters at the start of every unit. So before you begin teaching anything, a letter back home to mama and dad is provided so that parents know exactly what their kids are fixing to learn. There's questions where, hey, you can ask your child at home these kinds of questions to bring the lesson and learning home. All of the information, all the content is available online, not because you want to teach online, but you want moms and dads who are sitting in the comfort of their home. They can, I'm a little curious, how does this lesson talk about this content? So you can pull up, and literally you can see all of that content. And then if for whatever reason a parent doesn't like the way that a lesson has been written up, the state law, we believe parents are the driver of a child's education. So state law gives parents the ability to sort of temporarily opt out of instruction if it conflicts with their moral beliefs. And then it's the school's responsibility to provide sort of an alternative support for their child during that, what would have happened to the rest of the kids during that lesson.
Well, and what's the timing of the rollout of all of this? I've seen 2030, 2031 brought up.
Well, I'd say there's two different things happening in terms of sort of current public policy issues in Texas. One, so Bluebonnet is already a thing. It exists in reading in kindergarten through 5th grade and in math in kindergarten through about 10th grade. And so there are school districts all over the state of Texas opting into using Bluebonnet. And so it's spreading because I think most administrators recognize, oh, this is probably the highest quality content we'll ever get. So we don't require it. But school districts around the state are opting into it in larger and larger numbers. But separately, the State Board of Education, as I mentioned before, they're in charge of something called the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So they are currently entertaining an upgrade to the language arts TEKS, the English TEKS. The English TEKS do not currently specify what literature you're supposed to read. They have some standards like the child should be able to find the main idea, or they should be able to draw an inference. But what you draw the main idea from has been entirely dealer's choice for a very long time, to the detriment of both teachers and children, because it puts too much burden on school districts to have to pick a common body of knowledge. And as a result, we're not actually building a common body of knowledge. So the State Board of Education is, as we speak this week, having active public policy debates as to whether or not to add to the reading language arts standards a common required set of literary works for all children to read. And so they're trying to figure out how to strike a balance to have a common list while having some discretion or local choice for children and teachers to pursue their interests, but still enough of a common body of literature that all children will be then adequately supported with high levels of rigorous content in our intellectual tradition. So I was required to provide them under law a recommended list, and so I've done that. And so it has Animal Farm and Fahrenheit 451 and The Scarlet Letter and Hamlet, and it has Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. It has Job and Ecclesiastes. It has essays by Ayn Rand and Thomas Sowell. These were all in my recommendations for what we should make as part of the required literature, because these are these are the ideas. These are the concepts. These are the stories that educated Americans need. And so this is what children need to be taught while they're in our schools.
That is absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to see how all that comes out, and love the list that you put out. Thank you for your time today. What's the one thing that you'd most like to be sure the listeners take away from our conversation?
We are blessed. We have an army of educators working for us in Texas public schools. About 400,000 teachers, about 800,000 total employees. But the work is hard, and we are currently, not all of our schools are working for all of our kids. And so it's incumbent upon us to, yes, provide our educators with support and respect that they deserve as the most important profession in our society, but it's also important for us to push to continue to make this system work better for our kids. And that is exactly what I have been doing. It's exactly what the legislature has been focused on, so that next year is better than last year.
Commissioner, thank you for joining.
Thank you.